Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app, O'Connor and Company.
It is 6:07. Good morning. O'Connor and Company here, and we're glad that you're there joining us here. Coming up at 6:35, Mark Mix, National Right to Work Foundation, will join us. Then at 7:05, Jonathan Fahey, former acting director of ICE. And then at 8:05, the chairman of the Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan. Larry O'Connor here with Patrice Onwuka. Good morning, Patrice.
Good morning. Happy Friday, Larry.
There it is. Back at you. All right, a couple of things here in the news economically. First of all, of course, we're coming off of some great numbers the president enjoyed over the holiday break, including the unemployment numbers staying steady, the inflation numbers going down when they were supposed to go up, and the GDP going way up when it was only supposed to go a little bit up. All of that is good news. We're expecting a jobs number today, are we not,
Yes.
Patrice?
We are, yes.
So hopefully we'll get those numbers around 8:30, which is usually when they drop. But we do have some data on the trade deficit. Now, let's start first with the cost of the tariffs. And a lot of people, understandably, have said a tariff is a tax. And sure, I guess. I mean, if you want to define a tax as any fee that is levied by a government on a private citizen or entity, in this case, either a country or a corporation doing business with a country via import-export, yes, sure, okay. Most people think of a tax as something that we, the people, have to pay, right, based on our income or based on our spending. And the reason that most people who have opposed tariffs in the past have said tariffs are a tax is because it was always presumed that the country or the business that are paying those tariffs would then pass it on to the citizenry through the cost of the goods or services, or if the government is paying the tariff, they would pass it on via a tax. All right, so given all of that, sorry for the big buildup,
Okay.
Here is the chief economic advisor of Alliance, Mohammed El-Erian, who was on CNBC yesterday talking about the new trade deficit numbers and specifically the impact of President Trump's tariffs over the last 6 months. Listen.
There's the exporter, there's the importer, and there's the consumer. And so far, the consumer is carrying the least of the burden. I can tell you what's going on right now in companies is they're going product by product, going through the elasticities, what they think the consumer can absorb in terms of price increase without destroying demand. And they're finding out that they cannot pass through as much of the price increase as they want.
Interesting.
In other words, somebody is paying the tariffs, but it's not the consumer through the costs of their products or services. Now, you could also argue then that, well, then that means the businesses, the importers or exporters are paying it, and that means that their profit margin is shrinking, right, because they're absorbing those costs, and that means that their stock price is going to fall, or it means that the value of their company is not as good. But meanwhile, the stock market is hitting record highs. So all of that is the calculation here, I suppose, is, the market economics dictate that the cost of products will not absorb appropriately the cost of the tariffs and still sell these goods. So the businesses are making the calculation that they'll absorb the costs. And it turns out that that has not impacted the valuation of those companies or their P&Ls because their stock price continues to go because the economy is strong enough to absorb that additional tariff burden. And meanwhile, the net result we'll get to in a minute. But am I doing this right? Because you're the one with the economics degree here, not me.
I mean, what's important here is when we look at what's being imported versus what's being exported, and we're seeing exports rising. So U.S. produced goods that we export to other countries, that's on the rise, and what we are bringing in from other countries is falling. It's very basic, but that's really what President Trump campaigned on, which was greater domestic production of goods rather than relying on importation of other goods. That's actually a good thing for the American economy and for American businesses.
So far the tariffs have been absorbed by the importers, exporters, and not by the consumer for the most part, as you just heard. The stock market is trading at record highs. The GDP is up over 4.5, which it was supposed to be down at 3.
Very robust growth.
Right.
Yes.
Hasn't affected the jobs market that we can see. We'll find out maybe a little bit later today with the latest numbers. It hasn't affected inflation because inflation is actually lower than people have anticipated.
It's starting to come down after ticking back up.
Yeah,
yes.
Inflation's lowest since 23, I believe. So now, what does it do to the trade deficit, which was really the whole point here, right? We're going to levy these tariffs because our trade deficit is out of whack, and we need to decrease the imports and increase U.S. exports. So take it away, Rick Santelli, CNBC yesterday with the latest trade deficit numbers.
The secret salve of the U.S. economy, what Greenspan called the special sauce. Well, this is the third quarter preliminary. There will be changes. 4.9%, extremely close to estimates, and a really solid number. In the rearview mirror, 3.3 becomes 4.1 for the last quarter's final. So 4.9, wow, you have to go a long way back to find a higher number. We have to go all the way back to the third quarter of 2020. Productivity's great. And if we look at unit labor costs come in, well, 1.9, down 1.9. That's a minus sign. They are lower. Unit labor costs are lower. That's always good news. And in the rearview mirror, the 1% to the upside becomes minus 2.9 to the downside as costs drop. And finally, on the trade balance, which we know is going to be a deficit, we're expecting a number around 50.
All right, let's get to the trade deficit now. That was the cost of labor numbers. Here's the trade deficit numbers.
Go up. This is unreal, the movement in this number. Minus $29.4 billion. We cut it basically in half. Just consider this. In March, it was $136 billion. Right now, it's a whisker under $30 billion. We haven't been that small in a long time. I don't have enough records here to go back that far, but you're going back a ways. And here's the news on why it moved lower.
I do have the number, 2009, Patrice. The trade deficit
the last time?
has not been down this low to $29 billion since 2009.
Yeah, coming out of the Great Recession. I mean, so there were a lot of numbers just thrown at you, and I'm looking at Market Watch, which kind of puts them all together for me. Consumer credit is another one, Larry. Cut in half last month. They were predicting $9.2 billion in consumer credit. It came in at 4.2, which means that consumers are actually not using plastic as much to be able to afford whatever they're buying. That's a good sign that the family balance sheet is improving. Maybe it's because we're getting bigger paychecks from as a result of the tax cuts, which have started to filter into paychecks the first of the year, or maybe it's because people are starting to see that they're spending less on consecutively less as inflation is starting to erode again. I mean, decelerate again. That's a good thing. So I'm excited about what we're seeing here. Trade deficit was expected to come in at $58 billion. It came in at $29 billion, Larry. So that again, it is simply that we are exporting more to the world than we are importing right now. And yeah, I get as a free trader, it's important that we focus on what we produce really well. But hey, if we're producing a lot of goods really well and other countries are buying them, that is great for the American economy, great for American businesses, and will lead to great things for consumers and workers in this country.
That's right. Don't forget that step 2 of Trump's tariff and trade policy is to ramp up domestic manufacturing and bring a lot of that manufacturing back home. That's the second phase, which hasn't even begun yet. Companies committed to it, but they're still ramping up. They're tooling up. They're just now taking advantage of the
One big beautiful bill,
right? Of the beautiful bill, and that part of it that will increase our exports even more.
Oh,
presumably.
absolutely.
You know what would really boost this economy, though? To hear our Secretary of Treasury say that we're going to get serious about stopping the fraud that goes on from federal tax dollars and federal government grants that go to these states that obviously have shown up in fraudulent enterprises. And in a moment, you'll hear our Secretary of Treasury say just that.
WMAL, making sense of the news. Live from the Home Paramount Pest Control Studios. Home Paramount, the leader in pest control since 1939.
As you know, there are certain states that are taking federal tax dollars, turning them into government-funded programs that have been defrauded. In Minnesota, of course, it could be to the tune of $9 billion or more, mostly centered in the Somali immigrant community outside of Minneapolis. That's being investigated at the state and federal level. But there are other states involved with that kind of fraud, too. How bad is it, and what can the federal government do about it? Here's Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent yesterday, cut 8.
Hybrid force, about 2,500 of them, and they led the charge here. So it was IRS CIs who uncovered the initial fraud and the prosecutions. So it's with that group, with other groups at IRS, and with the powers of the Treasury to track where the money came from, where it's going. We saw this very unsettling news yesterday that many people involved here with the administration of these programs have tried to go back and they recreate documents, change documents, and we're not going to have that. We are going to hold people accountable. We're going to press this to the full extent possible. And like I said, I think that this may just be, it's a cold day outside, so this could be the tip of the iceberg here in Minnesota, but it's probably may not be as prevalent, but the dollars may be bigger and larger in other states. And just to put this in perspective for American taxpayers, for American families, the GAO, the General Accounting Office, believes that there is somewhere between $300 and $600 billion of annual fraud, roughly 10% of government spending that disappears due to fraud. If we can recapture that, that is 1% to 2% of GDP.
That is an astounding statistic.
Goodness.
So again, General Accounting Office estimating there's somewhere between $300 and $600 billion in annual fraud. That's about 10% of government spending, 1% to 2% of GDP. That is ginormous. And by the way, as there is more increased focus on this, could we please pause for a moment and thank Elon Musk for, in his own audacious and somewhat unconventional way a year ago, bringing attention to all of these things through the Doge efforts, and now that work continues. Patrice, but that's what impact would that have on the economy if we can actually claw back those funds and actually stop
that means that we can take that money and put it toward paying down the national debt. Mm-hmm. It means we could take that money and cut taxes, potentially eliminate taxes for people earning below $50,000, even maybe $100,000 a year. I'd have to run the specific numbers on those income levels. But imagine having no income tax if you're earning, if you're a middle of America type person, middle income family, where you're a truck driver, nurse, whatever the case is, and you don't have to pay income tax. Now you might have to pay FICA still, but hey, income tax eliminated. This is massive, and we've always talked about the fraud in the federal government, and the left has said, "Oh, it's just so minor." But look at all the good we do. In fact, no, we're doing a lot of bad. Our tax dollars are doing much more bad than, unfortunately, I think we've recognized until now.
There was one other statement here that I wanted to draw to people's attention, and that has to do with this insidious circle of funding that we see that goes, and not the money that goes to these NGOs that get federal dollars and then end up donating to the Democrat Party. We got to get to that next. But first, what about the money that people are getting from the federal government, and then they end up wiring money to foreign countries, to entities, whether they're terrorist groups, as we've seen in Somalia allegedly, or back to, Central America or other foreign nations? If you're receiving federal money, why are you then wiring money out of our country? Scott Bessent, Treasury Secretary, he has something to say about that.
And we're also targeting the 2 counties here, and we're going to do enhanced surveillance. And from now on, anyone who wires money out from one of these money service businesses has to check a box saying whether they are on public assistance. And if you are on public assistance, we are going to start pushing that you cannot wire money out of the country.
Oh, gosh. Well, what if they lie and they don't tell us for public assistance?
Well, then
that's a crime, lying on a federal form.
We're going to follow it up, and we are going to push that you can no longer do that. The American people, our generosity has been taken advantage of.
Our generosity is funding al-Shabaab, an Iranian interest, it could be.
Well, the money.
Okay, this is really bad.
The money is supposed to go for alleged asylum seekers and their families and children. And if you were wiring the money out of the country,
that's the bottom line. I don't care where it's going. If you're receiving federal money, the money should stay here in the United States of America. If you have enough money that you can send it overseas to whoever, Al-Shabaab or to Grandma Shabaab, then you've got more money than you need. You don't need my federal tax dollars. It's supposed to stay here.
That's the key here, Larry, when it comes to remittances. We're not saying that people can't send money back home if they'd like to. That's their prerogative. But if you're saying that you need the federal government to help you make ends meet, then you're taking federal dollars. And whether you're using those federal dollars as a remittance or you're using other income you have that you really don't need the federal dollars at all to do remittances, that's where the issue is. And one other thing, I love that IRS agents are actually doing what they're supposed to do, Larry. Not go after conservatives for supporting conservative organizations, but going after fraudsters for abusing our federal dollars. That's what the IRS should be doing.
Thank you. 624.
All right, coming up next, Mark Mix, president of National Right to Work Foundation. Stay with us. It's O'Connor and Company at 6:30.
WMAL-FM, Woodbridge, Washington, a Cumulus media station. Making sense of the news. News Talk 105.9. WMAL. News now. Now, on 105.9 FM and streaming worldwide on the WMAL app. O'Connor and Company.
It is 6:36. Good morning. Thanks for tuning into O'Connor and Company. We're getting you where you need to go, and we're talking about all the stuff you care about. Coming up in 30 minutes, Jonathan Fahey. He's the former acting director of ICE. We're going to get his take on all the nonsense we're seeing and the tragedies we're seeing across this country and how we can fix it. Also at 8:05, talk about fixing things. Well, he's the chairman of the Judiciary Committee. He just sent a criminal referral to the Justice Department after their hearing on Minnesota fraud. He's Jim Jordan. He joins us at 8:05. Larry O'Connor here with Patrice Onwuka, our pal, our buddy, and guiding light over there at Independent Women, of course. Love your work there and the whole team. Good morning, Patrice.
Good morning, Larry. Thank you so much. That's so kind.
And, of course, you focus so much on economic issues and right-to-work issues. That is the main focus of our next guest, Mark Mix. Because we've got a major union battle right now in the state of Maryland. This has to do with Mom's Organic. This is Mom's Organic Market, which is very popular.
Yeah,
of course,
chain,
with
popular chain. Yes.
The crunchy granola crowd in Maryland, and that includes my wife, Meredith. You don't have to be a conservative or a liberal to like that stuff. All right, Mark Mix, thanks for joining us. What's going on with my Mom's Organic Market?
Yeah, good morning, Patrice. Good morning, Larry. Yeah, this is one of those interesting stories about labor policy, and it's got just kind of twists and turns that are fairly unique. But suffice to say, the employees at this Mom's Market in College Park, Maryland, on January 13th, next week, are going to get a chance to what is called deauthorize the United Food and Commercial Workers Local 400 unit that, quote-unquote, represents them. And the interesting twist in this story, Larry, is that the workers voted against a contract that the union had negotiated with their employer. The union had been there, quote-unquote, representing them. They proposed a contract to the employees, and they said no. But under the United Food and Commercial Workers Constitution, the UFCW can impose the contract on the workers unless a certain percentage of them don't vote to go out on strike. Meaning, so if they vote to stay at work and keep working, the union can impose a contract. And, Patrice, you'll recognize this. The contract includes what's called a union security clause, which is language that says every worker must pay union dues or fees to the union or they can't work. They would lose their job. Now, this is different than a decertification election, which oftentimes says you can move the union out, but you can't do that for up to 3 years of getting the union out, despite the fact that the union imposed a contract you voted against. But they can still force you to pay union dues unless you deauthorize. So that vote's coming up on January 13th, next week, to basically deauthorize and take away the forced dues fees provision out of the contract, despite the fact that the contract will stay in place.
You know, Mark, this is a really big win. Maryland is not a right-to-state work, unfortunately, but we've got some great right-to-state works not too far away from us. And that's the crux of this, which is that you should not be forced to pay union dues if you're not part of a union simply because your workplace is unionized, so to speak. And I mean, the work that you guys do is so important. Talk to us about where we're seeing right to work right now, because, I mean, we've got some red states where it's protected, but is there any traction happening in blue states? Do you see issues like this in moms as kind of an entry point into potential right-to-work legislation in a blue state like Maryland?
Yeah, absolutely. The facts of this particular case just expose labor policy as it relates to the power of organized labor over workers that they claim to represent. Obviously, our biggest battle right now, Patrice and Larry, is in Virginia. I mean, there's a bill right now introduced, ready to go next week, that would repeal Virginia's right-to-work law that's been in place since 1947. We have offensive battles in a couple of states like New Hampshire and Montana. We've got a right-to-work bill. A series of right-to-work bills will be introduced across the country as state legislatures begin their work. But it's these types of battles, to your point, Patrice, where you show the disconnect between union officials and the employees they claim to represent. So these workers say no to the contract. The union writes a contract that says they get money no matter what. And the workers can't throw the union out for 3 years because those are the rules. And not only that, they've got to get a majority of everybody that works there to get out of this forced payment of dues. But yet when you get into a union, it's simply a majority of those voting. So labor law, and not to get too deep into the water, Patrice, you've been there, you know this. But the reality of it is this is a power and privilege that union officials have over workers. And right to work is the one solution that says, hey, you don't have to pay us if you don't want to.
Mark Mix is our guest. He's the president of National Right to Work Foundation, and we can get deep into it because we have a very well-informed audience here, and I just want to lay this out very clearly because those like Abigail Spanberger, who just won the governor's race, sadly, in Virginia, who you're about to have to go head-to-head with over right to work, they love to claim that, well, oh, no, this isn't the government imposing anything. This is just allowing workers, employees, to have the right to organize and have the right to have a vote and be able to get a union to represent them if they want it. Well, here we are in College Park, Maryland, belly of the beast, inside the Beltway or right on the Beltway border, wanting to vote to disband that union or not have the union grab their union dues, and they're stacking the deck against them. This isn't about workers' rights at all.
Indeed, Larry. And, the idea of joining a union if you choose to do so, paying money to a union if you choose to do so, all of that's protected in the law, and frankly, it doesn't need to be. So, United Food and Commercial Workers, they told these workers that they won't enforce the union security clause, but it will remain in the contract. And so they should have no problem telling the workers at Moms right now, say, hey, vote for this and get out. But they won't do that, Larry. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me tell you something. And anytime someone in power says, oh, yeah, that's in the contract you're signing, but don't worry, we'll never enforce it. Trust me.
They will.
Trust me. That's the first thing they're going to enforce.
I think your previous careers. Yeah, your previous careers, right? Yeah.
It's true. In fact, I used to be on the management end of these union negotiations, and I would try that ploy often. All right, we'll leave it there, Mark. Listen, we'll be watching this vote on January 13th. Very interesting, and it could be quite a development. And it also, by the way, in my opinion, another indication of some people's eyes being open to the lies they've been told by the political left in this country. Little victories are important. Hey, Mark,
thank you,
always
Mark.
Great to talk with you. Great work as always. 6:43.
This afternoon on the Derek Hunter Show, Housing and Urban Development Secretary Scott Turner with the latest developments at HUD, plus how he's the only cabinet secretary with 5 NFL interceptions. 3 o'clock on WMAL.
Well, it's official. The Marco Rubio memes are out of control. And, well,
and I'm
hilarious.
Here for it.
As you know, one of the jokes about Marco Rubio right now is that he seems to take on job after job after job. Currently, I believe he has 3 jobs, which is Secretary of State, National Security Advisor, and he heads USAID, which has been brought under the umbrella of the State Department. That said, it's become a joke that anytime a new job opens up in the government, and lately outside the government, everyone assumes that Marco Rubio will get that job. Here's Marco Rubio on Labor Day during a cabinet meeting joking about it. You'll remember.
Mr. President, first of all, everyone's made this comment already and needs to be echoed again. You were elected as the President of Working Americans, and that's why this Labor Day is so meaningful. For me personally, this is the most meaningful Labor Day of my life as someone with 4 jobs. And so
So he's owning the meme. He's swerving into it. Now, you remember the moment the meeting with Zelensky in the Oval Office, and it got really ugly and bad, and there was a picture of Marco Rubio looking really angry and foul sitting on the sofa next to J.D. Vance. Well, people adopt and adapt and use AI to put him in different outfits and different costumes.
Yes, it's hilarious.
And he looks really – so the latest one is he's dressed up like an Eskimo, with all these fur coats, and it says Marco Rubio finding out he's going to be the next governor of Greenland. Right. But it goes beyond that. I mean, Selena Zito tweeted out a montage of them, including a picture of him dressed like the quarterback of the Green Bay Packers. I think that's when Jordan Love had an injury. He's dressed as Attila the Hun. He's dressed as Napoleon Bonaparte. It just goes on. And now there's a picture of him standing with like a Banana Republic dictator sash across his shoulder in front of the Venezuelan flag saying Marco Rubio, Commissioner of Venezuela. It just goes on and on.
I love it. Larry, this is a throwback. Do you remember in Living Color? It was a comedy sketch show similar to SNL, but it was really targeted at urban audiences,
oh, sure.
like black audiences.
Show.
The Wayans brothers were the producers.
Right. Exactly.
They had a segment called Hey Mon, which is about a Caribbean family who had a bunch of Jamaicans who had all these jobs. The father had like 15 jobs. The mother had 12 jobs. The kids had 10 jobs each. And if they ever dated somebody with less than 8 jobs, like that was a no-go.
That's right.
Marco Rubio is a Caribbean man, and I will leave it at that.
How many jobs you got, man? You lazy lima bean. When I was 8 years old, I had 4 jobs. Oh, I remember that. It was great. He is actually owning this meme. And as you know, he's a huge football fan. He's a Floridian. Yes. He's a Florida man. So he tweeted this out yesterday. He said, I don't normally respond to online rumors, but I feel the need to do so at this moment. I am not a candidate for the currently vacant head coach and GM positions with the Miami Dolphins. While you never know what the future may bring, right now my focus must remain on global events and also the precious archives of the United. Oh, that's right. He's the chief archivist as well. I forgot he has that job too.
All I'm saying is Manchester United needs a new manager. And listen, hey.
He likes football, not football. And all I have to say is, Rubio, stay out of the radio business, okay? Just stay in your lane. It is 6:53.